Hello, and you're all very welcome to Along the Line, brought to you by CK Streaming. Coming up on the show this week, Lisa Gleeson, PRO Tipperary Ladies Football, tells us about their bingo bonanza they'll be holding on Easter Sunday night. Something that all the family can get involved in. While Stephen Gleeson will be joining us to tell us about his new book, Game of My Life, which is flying off the shelves at the moment. And Eamon Cochran, who features in the book, will also be joining us. And joined once again by Sean Matt. Well, Sean, how are things?
Good now, and yourself?
Not so bad at all, no. Great reaction to the show last week and from the down your memory lane slot from the last few weeks.
Yeah, great reaction to Tommy and Brendan last week. It was a great listen to now. It really gives an insight into the 2001 year. They had great stories and just showed the great bond they had between them in the panel that year. And it was a very good listen to now.
Yeah, because what a lot of people are asking is how they can actually see these matches again too, and they're searching YouTube and GA now and that to see, and it's kind of jogging the memory for a lot of people.
It is jogging the memory, and it's also introducing people that might have been too young to be back then. I was only a year old when it happened, so it really gave me an insight into what happened that year. It really jogged the memory then of people as well, because I know one was one of the best years in Tip hurling, going unbeaten for the whole year. So it was a great listen to know.
Yeah, and with Stephen Gleeson coming up there shortly as well, he's a great book out there at the minute.
Yeah, Stephen's book, it gives a great insight on how he thinks the hurlers, you've Shamey and Brendan and James Woodlock and the likes, and I know we've Eamon Cochran coming up in the show, so it'd be interesting to see what he says now and give his take.
Yeah, another connection with 2001 as well. So that just looking at some of the matches that lads have picked, so we'll hear what Stephen has to say on it. But Eamon Cochran picked Clare in '99, it wouldn't have great memories. James Woodlock picked the 2009 All Ireland, and so it could just be interesting to see what exactly the reason was with Eamon picking that kind of a game.
Exactly, yeah. Everyone has their different reason for picking the game. So just interesting to see why he picked and how he probably thought it was a good game for himself. So it'd be interesting to hear what he says now.
Well, in these COVID times, fundraising is becoming harder for groups to undertake. But on Easter Sunday night, the 4th of April, Tipperary Ladies Football will hold a bingo bonanza. Joining us now along the line to tell us all about it and how you can get involved is PRO of the Tipperary Ladies Football Board, Lisa Gleeson. Lisa, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Tomas, for having me on this evening. I'm delighted with the opportunity to promote our fundraiser for this year, our main fundraiser. We might have more. We're going to have this big online Easter bingo bonanza on Easter Sunday. It's a great week really for women in sport with all that is happening in Cheltenham with Rachel Blackmore, another fantastic female Tipperary role model out there. What is it? It's going to be a good night anyway on Easter Sunday. We have a couple of guest presenters, and you can access our books online on our website, on our Facebook page, and through our Twitter account. We have prizes, a prize fund of €2,000. The first person to get a line gets €50. First person to get 2 lines get €80, and so on and so forth. Books are, one book is €10, 2 books €16, and 3 books are €20. So it's quite reasonable for everybody, and everyone can join it in from 0 to 90 or even 100 or more to join in and make it a fun night out for all the family.
Yeah, so what with COVID and that, the likes of bingo, it's a novel idea and all the family can get involved in as well.
Yeah, great. Just a bit of fun and a bit of crack. I don't think I've ever played bingo myself, and I'm looking forward to it. We have all the family on here going to look forward to it. I don't think they've ever only in school for whatever. So this should be a real bit of fun for everybody, And we're going to have some random spot prizes as well throughout the night. So
yeah, and obviously at the moment it's very hard to raise funds with COVID and with the restrictions in place. So novel ideas are always welcome.
Yeah, exactly. And something that brings families together for a bit of crack is ever more important, I suppose, at this juncture. In the middle of the pandemic, we're all getting tired, and we're all getting tired of looking at each other. So maybe a little bit of fun and a little bit of competition amongst ourselves is always a bit of crack, isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously, like you said, the prize money. There's good prize money there, and the books good value for money then as well. Like so, hopefully, we'll see plenty of it.
Yeah, well, sure, I suppose, look, ladies football, ladies sport in general needs money because to keep role models like we have over the last couple of years, and like we've an all-star and Aisling Maloney and what is it, to see all those girls that are out in Australia, Aisling McCarthy and Orla Dwyer, they're doing so well, and as I said, Rachel Blackmore this week, we all need ladies to the fore, really, because, it's that time for ladies, really, and we want the support for ladies.
It's great, like at the moment with obviously Tipperary won 2 of the last 3 intermediate All Irelands, and they were probably unlucky last year not to be in an All Ireland semi-final. A few decisions here and there, but for young girls growing up in Tipperary and having role models that they can meet and see every day, like that's a huge thing for them as well.
Oh, massive, and to have even dual players, and fantastic to see them out there.
And just look at, I know we don't know what the situation is at the moment as regards getting back there, and hopefully they'll be back fairly shortly. But when they are back, there'll be exciting times ahead as well with Declan Carr.
Yes, very exciting. It's a whole new era for us, and we're all very excited. Can't wait to get back into the fields, get back training, get back to normality, I suppose, really.
Yeah, and because Shane Ronan had given great service there over the last few years too, Tipperary.
Oh, Shane was fantastic. He gave us everything. What is it? And a fantastic trainer, fantastic manager, fantastic. Just, we were very lucky, and we were delighted with him.
Yeah, he obviously raised the profile of football in Tipperary, both for men and women. And the women are kind of the standard bearers for football in Tipperary the last couple of years, and you can see it even with the men managing to win a Munster title last year. But I'd say a lot of the women were inspirational for that team as well.
They would have been, but like the Tip footballers have been thereabouts all along. And I mean, that team, it wasn't really a huge surprise, really, when they look back and all that they had achieved at underage and to get to where they got and to win that historic. I mean, it meant so much to people in Tipperary, but it meant so much to the football community in Tipperary. Just huge. I know in my own family that it meant so much to them and relatives and in-laws and outlaws that would support Tipperary football from the whole way through,
Yeah, but like the football on the men's side, there'll be a small pocket in South Tipperary. There'll be a strong football hold. And then you've obviously the Friends of Tipperary football that will be pushing them strong as well. But ladies football seems to be a lot more widespread in the county than what the men's has been like. There's people from both ends of the county playing ladies football.
There is, but we would like to see more up north. More clubs up north, and we know they're trying, so it's great. And we know that Rossgrey are trying a Mothers and Others club now. In the last couple of weeks, they've launched it, so it's great to see that.
Yeah, Ronan Kelly, I think, is involved in this, and Teresa Cunningham, who was Jimmy's wife. Jimmy gave a good service to Tipperary football all down the year. He was sadly passed away there a couple of years ago, but Teresa is heavily involved in that as well. So I no doubt if they put their mind to something there, knowing them personally, they'll make a success of it. Like I know a lot of girls in Rossgrave that were looking to play football, but there was no club for them. Like some of them were going to Templemore, some of them were going to Templetoohey and the likes of these areas just to play football.
Yeah. Oh, it's great to see it. What is it? More the merrier. We'd love to see them all playing football anyway.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have a few wearing the blue and gold that part of the county shortly as well.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Just before we let you go again, I know you said on the website and your social medias it'll be on, and all books are available from there.
All books are available from there, yeah. And they can be printed at home. Or if they don't have access to a printer, you can just copy the numbers down. We'll be able to contact the winners anyway, so.
I hope it all goes well for you, Lisa, and I hope you've great success over the year as well. And we hope to talk to you again very soon.
Thank you very much, Tomas, and thanks again for the opportunity. Best of luck.
A Game of My Life is the hottest sports book in the shops at the moment, telling the story of 35 of Tipperary's greatest ever hurlers, recalling the one game that sticks out for them during their career. Written by Tip FM GA commentator Stephen Gleeson, this is a must-read for any Tipperary supporter. I'm delighted to say that joining us along the line now to tell us all about the book is Stephen Gleeson. Stephen, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks a million, Tomas.
I suppose, Stephen, what was the inspiration behind the book?
Manifold. I suppose I've been interested in Tipperary hurling most of my life, really, like yourself, and have been there on numerous occasions, above in the terrace or in the stand or at matches down the years. And Liam Hayes approached me maybe 2 years ago about the possibility of working on a book about Tipperary hurling, and we trashed out a few ideas, and it went to and fro, and finally settled on one about players choosing a game that stood out for them in their time hurling. And in fairness, Liam was brilliant. He left me a lot of space within it. He's more well known, I suppose, from his football days when he won All Irelands with the Meath footballers back in the 80s, and they were the team back then. But the inspiration just came from the idea that I would be able to try and tell the story of Tipperary hurling and let these players really tell the story over time. And it kind of just grew from maybe focusing on a game was the initial idea, to focus on the 2010 All-Ireland, the 1991 replay, maybe the 1971 All-Ireland, standout games, and let players talk about it. But it just went and it evolved from that completely. And the first interview I did was with Jimmy Finn, and he spoke about the 1950 All-Ireland. And I just knew from there, like, you have to let the player choose the game. You can't ask them to talk about a particular game. So they picked the game, and we just let the book flow. And I suppose it just came together midway through, and I had around 10 or 12, maybe 14 Tip players recorded. All of a sudden, it was just this book, it took over, and I started to try and tell the story of Tipperary hurling, and I really found a flow in it, and just go through all the changes across time, Tomas. I mean, like, you go back to Jimmy Finn's time, he was out tramming hay, in the fields, and then going in to Thurles to go training with Tipperary, going down for a cup of tea afterwards and going back home. Now, he did get a taxi into the matches back then in the 50s and the 60s. And like, that era is covered by a lot of the players. The likes of Tony Wall is in there, Lynn Gaynor, Matt Hassett, a lot of these guys from the 60s, Babs Keating, of course, as well. And like, that was a real glorious, glamorous era of Tipperary hurling. And then, like, the famine arrived, and it went downhill and onto the 80s. So I had kind of looked at the 60s and looked at the post-Killarney euphoria, but there was a big gap there in between, and I found that just as fascinating. The fact that Tip went years without winning. Why didn't they win during that time? What led to the famine? What type of famine was it? What were the after effects of it, so to speak? And I don't think Tip hurling ever really found its rhythm after that as such. It still hasn't got back to the place where it was in the 50s and 60s, and the way that Tip won so freely from that era, from the late 40s to the mid 60s. You had a 3 in a row period, 49 to 51, another All-Ireland 58. They were winning Munsters all the time. They were winning leagues all the time. And then you had 4 All-Irelands in 5 years in the 60s, and then one more in the 71, and then downhill. But the book just started to flow. I think if you're into hurling, it's one that you'll love. And the inspiration is really just a love of Tipperary hurling and trying to tell a story well.
Yeah, because there's great stories in the book, as you said, from plenty of different generations, and it's something that will suit every generation of supporter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the more recent era, you have the likes of Shamie Callanan in there. You have the great Paddy Maher, who's one of the all-time wonderful Tipperary hurlers, and he'll be remembered in 50, 60 years as well. Shamie Callanan. You've also got James Barry in there from the more recent era, Brendan Cummins, Owen Kelly. I mean, these lads are just stars of the game in the more modern era. But like some of the shows you did yourself, the Stars in '91 and that Babs Keating driven era with the likes of the three Bonners are in it. Ken Hogan is in there talking about the draw in '87. Colin Bonner with the replay in '87, and that's a huge period there. But just as fascinating too is that famine era from '71. We have Dinny Ryan, we have Tygo O'Connor and Babs, and then you go in, and one of the most beautiful pieces in the book is Tommy Butler of Drum and Inch, who passed away late last year, and Lord of mercy on his soul. When Tommy was just wonderful and a great storyteller, and he spoke at Tip and Cork in '76 and down in Limerick, and late in the game, Tip hit the post and the ball rattled off the post and back out into play down the field. Shawnee O'Leary was there, and Cork won the game, by a very narrow margin. And the famine continued, and like his account of John Doyle standing up on a stool inside the dressing room at halftime talking about the spirit of Knocknagow. And that just really hit me, I have to say. And goes on then, 79, Eamon O'Shea talking about the under-21s, and they won in All-Ireland, and that team was just starting to kick on then for Tip, and a lot of those players, like Pat Fox, who was there at corner back and ended up corner forward in the late 80s in the golden era for that generation. Like those players were on that team, and that era is kind of fascinating. John Sheedy in there, 83, with the first win for a Tip team in 10 years. So, like, there's ups and downs with Tipperary hurling, and I just try to cover the ups and downs as well, not just the glory era, everything. And I think it's all the richer for that.
Yeah, because Declan Carr actually picked a game, I think it was against Clare in Nina in October of '88. Now, Declan Carr, as we know, captain Tip to an All-Ireland in '91, but it just goes to show the wide variety of games that each player has picked.
Absolutely, Tomas. And that was his debut. Babs Keating called him and said, you're getting a chance here, you better shine or you're gone again. And there was, a big turnover of Tip players that just got a couple of games but weren't performing out the door again. And that was, he knew that was the time for him. So it was a wet, dirty day above in Nina. And he went out in the field and knew everything depended on that match. And as he said himself, he just started hitting shoulders, getting stuck in, driving lads out of the way, hitting the ball down the field and finishing up in the game, scored a point, and the crowd just gave him that huge cheer. Yourself when there's a small crowd at a game on a winter's day, but the clap was so loud, he remembered it. And I thought that was a really strong one actually as well, because Declan moved down as a teenager from Dublin, and that was a huge move. His brother Tommy then was down, played a bit of football with Tip, went back to Dublin and won an All-Ireland, or played in an All-Ireland final with Dublin after that in '84, but he couldn't get on the Tip football team. But at that era, Declan just needed that game that day in Clare in a challenge match to make the breakthrough, and he picked that one. And yeah, it's mad because he was going to pick the '91 replay, and I think he was very instrumental in that game as well. But picked a challenge match on a drizzly day in Nina, and I thought that was huge as well. And I play soccer actually with Declan for Clodagh Rangers, and no better man on a wet, dirty, drizzly day with puddles on the ground. Yeah, he's serious. The ball will be coming in and Carr would go up and you just hear a shout, Carr's ball, boom, and he'll drive it from, one penalty box to the other. Very much like the way he hurled, just full on, wholehearted and really passionate. And I just thought it was cool that he picked that game. And there is that variety there. It's not all lads picking All-Ireland final days that you might think it is. There's a lot of games there that matter to people deeply, and nobody else might have noticed how important a game it was at the time. And that game that Declan picked against Clare in a tournament match back in 1988 was very important. Tip needed a midfielder, and he made sure he was in his plans for Babs after that.
Yeah, because we've Eamon Cochran coming up there shortly, and he picked the 99 drawn game against Clare. And like, there's plenty of heartbreak in the book as well. It would have been easy for a lot of players to pick up or pick a match when they were lifting silverware, but it's kind of the beauty of the book then as well, that there is so many different stories between lifting Liam McCarthy and the heartbreak then as well.
Absolutely, Tomas. And like, there is a few lads that picked 2010 and the 91 replay, and I was kind of worried if they picked the same match, is that a problem? But it turned out that it wasn't. And like, as Liam Hayes said, everyone has a different recollection of the same game. So there was a lot of stories within that, and they picked, you know, glorious days, we'll say, the likes of Michael Ryan, Skippy Cleary, you know, and Pat Fox, Joe Hayes had 91. Then 2010, you had Brendan Cummins, Lar, Owen Kelly, Mikey Cahill, and you have a few that just pick different matches, different times. But those games really that are, you know, ones that are tough, I suppose, at times are big. One was James Woodlock picked 09, the final against Kilkenny, which was a heartbreaking day, like, for Tip supporters, but it was some game of hurling. And you've got others then, Tony Wald, who captained Tipperary to the All-Ireland in 58, and, you know, had a very successful time playing with Tip, was centre-back for that big era in the 60s as well. He picked a 1959 loss to Washford, and he can remember it clearly. And I spoke to Tony, you know, and like, he had a lovely poem in it about an old hurler, and originally it was about I think it was a Calais man in the 30s that played with Tip, and Tony recited this poem. He had found it once in a newspaper and cut it out and kept it, and beautiful poem. And like, as he said himself, like, he's the old hurler now, and he said that he could still recall so much from that game, where he had forgotten matches that he won, and he could remember the wind blowing against him, and the referee saying, "What way do you want to play?" And he says, "We'll play against the wind." That's how confident he was that Tip would win it, going in as All-Ireland champions. But sure enough, the wind turned into a gale force wind, blew the other way. Washford won that game and went on to win the All-Ireland in 59, the last time Washford won it. But Tony's memory was just brilliant for that. And it was the first match that his wife went to as well. She was from Dublin and went down to see him play hurling, and they were bet out the gate below in Cork. So that was one of those memories. Liam Cahill, the draw against Limerick in 96, and as you said there, Eamon Cochran then that game in 99. And like, that one, I suppose, was tough for a lot of Tip supporters, because we really wanted to put Clare back in their box, kind of thing, because that Clare team had just stormed into it in the late 90s, and Tip were just trying to find a way back and just couldn't get over that Clare team, really, the likes of Daly Dare and Jamesy O'Connor and them lads. But Cochran came out, hurled a stormer that day against Jamesy O'Connor. I can actually remember it well. I was on the terrace that day, and I just have recollections of that match. And Eamon, I know from school in Templemore and Our Ladies, was always a brilliant hurler, right through from when he was a first year all the way through. And picking that game, like, you know, for some Tip supporters, it was a disappointing year overall. But for him, that match stood out that time. You know, he was making it onto the Tip team and becoming a regular. And I think that's the thing with the book. It takes people to all these matches, all these times in their life, and how you see the match and how you see the time is probably all interlinked. Like, you were probably at that one as well.
Yeah, a few bad memories of that. All right. Like, looking at, like, Tony Wall picking 59, and Tip went on to win 4 All-Irelands in the 60s. And if you look at the game Eamon has picked, and 99, Tip went on and won an All-Ireland in 2001, and Woody picking 09, and obviously we won the All-Ireland the following year. Like, Tipperary have always won an All-Ireland in some generation. Like, we've all been lucky enough to see them win an All-Ireland, so they obviously have learned from experiences, the bad experience. Like, just talking to Tommy Dunn, Brendan Cummins and Nicky over the last couple of weeks on the show, they learned a fierce amount from 99. And like we said, that the day Tip played Clare in 2001, there was a fear of losing among the supporters because we knew what had happened in '99. And the boys said, no, they never had a fear all that year, no matter how tight the matches were. So they obviously learned from '99 then as well. And the same as if you ask anybody about the 2010 All-Ireland, when did you know we had it won, even though we were 6 or 7 points up the whole way through the second half, which was when Larry got the third goal. We were the supporters were kind of afraid to believe that they were going to win it as well. So it just goes to show that Tipperary have always learned from bad experiences.
Yeah, absolutely, Tomas. I see it now even with when I'm doing matches with Tip FM and you're following the play, and you might see a young player come in a league match and get half a game and maybe, go off before the end, or, just doesn't really perform. But the next day gets the chance, knows what to do and learns from the experience. And you're dead right. Collectively, I think Tipperary have a habit of learning from the experience and building on it. And 99 led to that win in 2001, as you said there. That team in 1959 that Tony Wall played on, a lot of those players were starting to come into their prime, and by the 60s, Tip really saw that, and the rest of the world did as well. But I think the only one in the book who didn't have a winning experience in that regard was Tommy Butler, who picked 76. But it did take a couple of years for Tip to win in under 21 after that. And that under 21 team in the late 70s led to, the golden era of 87 up to 93 when Tip won 2 All-Irelands and 5 Munster titles. So you're dead right. I think it's building blocks, and it's trial and error and learning as you go. And like we all know, you said Eamon Cochran is up next, like the player that Eamon Cochran was, and that game in 99, he was marking Jamesy O'Connor. And like, that's a baptism of fire, really. And to step up to the mark and become the player he did, I think, is testament to Cochran, first of all, and the fact that Tip were learning as they went. And 99 led to 01. And that Shane McGrath picked 08 and Woody picked 09. And then 2010, that All-Ireland came. But I think that it has been a flaw that we haven't even won more All-Irelands when we've had one bit of success, and hopefully that will change, and that you just get that winning mentality. It seems to be there underage now with minor and under 21 and under 20 wins, that you start winning one, you keep winning and you keep going. So hopefully that's something that's coming back into the character of Tipperary hurling, because there's a lot of links throughout time, and I really discovered that in the book. And like Cochran, that one, steps all the way. 99 led to that win in 2001, and Cochran had a huge part to play in all those wins and learned as he went as well.
Yeah, and I know it's hard to pick one in the book, but as a supporter, have you a game of your life yourself that you like to remember?
Well, just from the book, I suppose it really struck me as just a journey. And the games in the 70s I wouldn't have been a part of, but Tommy Butler's account of 76 really stuck with me. I read his a few times, and he was the first to pass away from the people that were in the book, and that really hit me. But again, it's a game I was never at. As a supporter, as a very young supporter, I was there in 87 when Tip beat Cork, and I don't remember anything as such, or drew at Cork and won the replay in Killarney. I don't really remember a lot from the game, but I can remember that euphoria when Tip got the goal and when Pat Fox got the equaliser that day. English got the goal and Fox the equaliser. As a young child, that memory definitely stayed with me and just gave me a graw for Tip hurling. 91, I was in Thurles as well that day when Aidan Ryan got the goal. But I suppose 2010 of the more recent era is definitely the standout game. Being in Croke Park that day, or wherever Tipperary people watched it, just to stop that Kilkenny team and really just turn the tables was excellent. As a match day commentator with Tip FM, without a doubt, 2016 was just unbelievable to win that day. And in the book, Noel McGrath picked Tip and Wexford as a game. 2019, I was shattered after doing commentary on that one. That game was something else, that All-Ireland semi-final in 2019. That one, I would say, was probably the most standout game that I can think of right now. I love that 2016 run that team went on. But Tip and Wexford 2019, that game had everything. And, you know, it had that heat, that championship feel to it. So I'd nearly pick that one, really. But I could pick 5 or 6, really.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing that you want to be looking at it for a while, because we have had so many great memories. What's our next project in line, Stephen?
Well, I've been thinking about a few different ideas, and one of them, Tomas, is something from a supporter's perspective. So this book is primarily, you know, the players, and it's some wonderful players, but so many Tipperary supporters have so many memories down the years of maybe the first match they went to, maybe a game where just something struck them and stays with them to this day. Maybe it's who they were at the match with, what the weather was like, you know, what stands out from the day. So there's so much really there. I think there's a book in that on Tipperary hurling and Tipperary supporters. So I've been talking with Liam Hayes, and that's something that I'm going to look at doing, is a book based around Tipperary supporters' thoughts and feelings of supporting Tipperary down the years. You know, was it the people you were at the match with stands out? Was it the sandwiches before, the banter on the bus on the way to the game? I remember going on a match myself on a bus to matches, and someone's shoe got thrown out the window somewhere around Fermoy, and then they wanted to stop the bus going back to find the shoe, and just anything like that, you know. Going to matches with family as well, going up on the train as a young person, maybe a parent watching a player play. There's so much there. So I'm going to really look at doing a book like that. And that's going to be my next project. And I'd also love to do a game of my life too, because there's, you know, I could have picked so many other players for game of my life. And it is something that I'd like to do, a second one in a similar vein to this, because this book is proven absolutely huge. It's only out a month, and it's on the bestsellers list at the moment in Ireland, which is massive. You know, Champagne Football is still up there, and I think it's Shane Carty with a book about Dublin football. But it's just magnificent to have a book about Tipperary hurling in the top bestsellers list in Ireland, and that's something that I'm absolutely thrilled about, and you know, grateful to Tipperary supporters for supporting it. But I definitely love to look at a book about Tipperary supporters. I'm not 100% sure what shape it'll take, Tomas, but it is something that I'm kind of looking at now and trying to figure out what way I want to go with it.
Yeah, well, if there's anybody out there watching or listening there that has any memories, you're more than welcome to email me into us here at contactckstream@gmail.com or any of our social media channels. And we'll pass them on to Stephen, and you never know, you could be the next ones in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be fantastic. You know, that would be just brilliant. And look, there's so many people, and they're enjoying your videos as well, and just following the players. I think it's something that that would be excellent. And I'd love to get some stories in from people and thoughts, and like, it'll be about supporters, and it'll be for supporters as well.
There was a lot of marriages and that were started over hurling matches and things like that as well. Like things like this now could be worth throwing into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you hear of that, like people just meeting a lifelong partner at a game, or you know, above in the Palace Bar, or in Roddy Boland's the night before it, or the night after Tip won in All Ireland, or a homecoming even. You know, it can be, you know, it can be broad. So it's just about building those stories and trying to work them into shape for a book. And I think it's something that stands out with people who are into sport. You can recall things, you know, yourself, like maybe a memory will come back to you based around a match you were at, or a time in your life, or something like that. It can be a grounding thing. And for people, you know, that hurling matters to, I think they remember matches, and they remember where they were or where they saw the game or things like that. It often strikes me now, I'd be doing commentary, and I'd get a message in to Tip FM, like, and I mightn't see it till after the match sometimes, but someone messaged me one day. They were on a boat out in Maryland in the USA, and they were listening to the match on the boat while out on a lake, and just stuff like that. Just, it's amazing, really. And you remember a game, I think, and you remember where you were or what you were doing at that time. And I'm sure everyone has memories from 91, from 2010, and 100 other matches as well, Tomas, in between that matter, you know.
It could be 2 or 3 volumes for supporters, so as well as what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, and I hope people get in touch with you, and that'll be brilliant. And I'm delighted if they do, and you can send them on to me.
Yeah, and what we have, we've a couple of copies here of the book, and if anybody does manage to get in contact with us, as we said, contact ckstreaming@gmail.com or any of our social media channels. And what we'll do is anybody that contacts us, we'll forward them on to Stephen. And Stephen, if you're happy enough to do a draw, maybe later on down the line for the winners of it, and to give them a couple of copies of the book. And sure, you never know, like, it could be material for your next book as well.
Perfect. That would be ideal. Yeah, very happy with that, Tomas. So, and like, it's something to subscribe to something like that is always great, because it's all about tip hurling and it's all about the tip supporter. And like, we're all looking forward to getting going with matches again soon. But I think if you're a tip supporter, I think you'll enjoy the read. And like, having stuff like this is just brilliant to have as well. And like, you've Eamon Cochran coming on. I'm sure he'll have some great stories as well about 99 and the years after that too.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll have a few more on next week as well along with it. Stephen, thanks for coming on, and I wish you the very best of luck with the book. No doubt it's going to be a success, and Tip FM will be doing well to keep you after this now. So we could see you with RT or somebody, so it could be hard for you to come back on the show.
Oh, no, I won't forget you, Tomas. Definitely not. And I'm delighted to be with Tip FM. It's great, and great being at the matches. And look, it's a pleasure to be on here chatting to you today.
Stephen, thanks very much. We'll talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks.
6th of June 1999 is a date etched in Tipperary supporters' memories, not for a famous victory, but rather a heartbreaking end to a game. As a young Tipperary side, having been the better team for the majority of their Munster semi-final clash against Clare in Park and Keith, were to be caught deep in injury time when Davy Fitzgerald buried a controversial penalty to the net to ensure the Banner got out of Cork with a draw, before 6 days later overpowering the Premier County by 10 points. Picking the drawing game as the game of his life is a man who was a stalwart of the Tipperary half-back line for 10 years, J.K. Bracken's Eamon Cochran. And I'm delighted to say Eamon joins us along the line now to look back on that game. Eamon, you're very welcome to the show.
Thanks, Thomas.
I suppose the first question, why pick a game that has so many bad memories for so many Tip people?
Yeah, I got that one wrong, Andrew, because you even said there was one pick a game that you played well in, and it certainly wasn't a game I would have played well in either. But it was probably, as I said, it was the most memorable game I would have had. I made my debut in '99 against Kerry, but playing Clare back then, I think for us all the rivalry was huge. And if I look back in a game that stands out, that would be from an atmosphere point of view more than anything else in rivalry. Back in '99, it was something special. So I suppose that was the game that, when I look back over the years, that running out under the tunnel that day, and just for the atmosphere, obviously the result wasn't what we wanted to be when Davy Fitz obviously buried the ball at the very end, but it was a game that stands out from a memory point of view for me, but I think for all the wrong reasons for Tipperary supporters.
Yeah, it was, like, as you said, the Kerry game was your first championship debut game, but this was your first big championship game. But what a lot of people wouldn't actually be aware of, like, you were part of the panel in '97 and you were let go after the Munster final. But do you think, as a young player, being involved and then let go, that you probably appreciate more if you're lucky enough to be asked back in after a year or two?
Yeah, I suppose I look back to '97, and I was called in under Len Gaynor, and it was a huge step up for me. I would have been playing intermediate club at the time, and I went down to college, and it was my first year in college, and I was playing for Skibbon. But looking back, I was so far off the pace for an intercounty player. At the time, I suppose I didn't realise it. I didn't know what it took to be an intercounty player, a lifestyle and everything. I was so far removed from what was needed at the time. And when I went in under Lynn, it was probably more a case. I was just delighted to be there, and I was in, I suppose, a bit of awe looking at the players around me at the time. Mikey Cleary was still in there, and obviously Declan, John Lahey, them all there, and it was more a thing. Great to be involved, but was I fighting to be on the first 15? In my own head, I wasn't there. It was just nice to be on the panel. And when you get involved in any inter-county setup, your ambition has to be to break in and make the first 15. I suppose mentally I wasn't there. I really didn't understand what it took to be an inter-county player. But when I was let go, I suppose the nature of the beast, we're all a bit disappointed, and it hit me then that what I needed to do, and I really wanted to get back into put on the Tipperary jersey again. And being involved in the Waterford College teams at the time, I was surrounded by inter-county players, and I really started to understand what it took to get up to the level to get back to put on the Tipperary jersey again. I was very fortunate then when Nicky took over in '99, because not too many people get a second chance, and I was fortunate to get the second chance. So I suppose I changed my whole lifestyle, mentally, physically, everything to make sure I could get back and put on the Tipperary jersey, but this time actually really go for it and make the most of it. And as I said, I was fortunate then when Nicky brought me back in '99.
Going into Cork that day, like going in the day of a big match, you're seeing the fans as you're gathering around the stadium as the bus is coming in. And then sure, you've got the infamous small dressing rooms in Cork. And what's it like there an hour or two before them big games?
Yeah, look, for me, like the Kerry game, it would have been, obviously it was inside in Thurles, would have been very few people at it, but it was number one, it was a huge shock. Obviously we went down the night before and had the normal routine. A lot of lads would be used to it. Would have been new to a number of us. I suppose Paul Orme and David Kennedy, a lot of us were making it, were just involved that year. And I think the bus leading up to the pitch, like it was just, the atmosphere was unbelievable. Sleeve One would have been played in the bus. Nicky used all this played for us, and the rivalry back then, I won't put it out, there was huge hatred between Tip and Clare. We've seen it in '97. As a supporter, I would have seen it then. Just to be involved then, I suppose you just have to keep your emotions and concentrate on what you need to do when you get out on the pitch. But just the lead up to the match, going up in the bus, and then obviously you get in there, and as you said there, the dressing rooms, you wouldn't swing a cat in the dressing rooms in Cork. I think people have to be in it to believe it. It was crazy. Like you'd have 27, 28 people squashed into a small dressing room with one toilet there. As I said, it was just, it adds to the atmosphere, and even the supporters, when you're going into the dressing rooms, they're in on top. Like, then in fairness to Nicky, he was able to get us into the gym beside it, a bit of room just before we went out. But I'll never forget that day, just going out through the crowd, like the supporters on top of you, and then you get out in the field, and it's just the noise. As I said in the book, I obviously never witnessed before, but even after that, I never witnessed noise like that in any game I played. After that, even the replay, whatever it wasn't the same. But there was so much build up from the '97 defeat to Clare, and as I said, that bitterness was there between both counties, and obviously it was brought out in the field again.
Yeah, because looking at the game itself, you kind of got off to a nervy start. You had the line ball there in the first minute, and you hit back out over the line, and then David Ford nipped around you for the first score of the game, but you didn't seem to let it affect you.
No, but yeah, I actually remember that, hit the line ball back out over the line. Jesus, ever chopping through my head after doing that. But no, I suppose looking back, you just get into the zone. Like Nicky would have, in fairness, of all the managers we'd have over the years, he'd have you set up for these games. And I was marking, I think it was marking Jamesy. I was marking Jamesy that day, and like we played in the league, and Nicky had a way of relaxing you before games, like marking James O'Connor. Was he was the marquee forward, and Nicky would have been saying, look, he's going to score 3 or 4 points off you. If you accept that, you don't panic. Things are going to happen. It's the next ball, and it was always concentrating on the next ball. And even when I missed the line ball at the start, I suppose mentally you're ready to go again. So, like you said, these things happen in matches, and you learn from experience. And so I suppose starting off for me, when you're young, you don't overthink about it. Probably later on in my career, before I finished up, you'd overthink things. But when you're young, you play with that abandon. You just play without that fear. You just get on and get on with the game, and you're always concentrating on the next ball. And I think Nicky was very, very good that way. There was never nervousness that he was going to be taking you off. He wanted you to go out and hurl and express yourself, and he gave you that freedom to do it.
Yeah, and I suppose having Liam Sheedy behind you in the corner would have been a help too.
Yeah, myself and Liam, I suppose I would have known Liam. Obviously got home an awful lot better after that. We worked together for a number of years, but Liam would have been, even back then, he was a huge leader. And when I look back in that dressing room at the time, I just mentioned, I suppose, Declan Ryan earlier on, like you had Liam Sheedy, Tommy Dunn, like they were brilliant to us starting off, you know what I mean? And they were very good in the dressing room and very good to relax you. And like Liam was just he was a player that was just so aggressive and just got on with it. But even if you made a mistake, he'd that word in your ear to encourage you. And I was fortunate. I think Conal Bonner could have been playing the same day as well. And there was a few of us making our debut. So to have the likes of Liam, Conal Bonner, obviously Brendan, and you have Tommy and the lads in front of you. So we had a lot of experience around us, but it's always good to have that. The likes of Liam yourself, and Liam has gone on to do since. And I would have known even back then in the dressing room, you often think leads in the dressing room will go on and become managers. And Liam was one person that always stood out for me and said, you know what, he will become a manager for Tipperary. Michael Ryan at the time as well. It was interesting. He would have been another person that I would have in my own head said, yeah, he'll actually go on and be a successful manager, because they were serious leaders as players, and they've gone on to be leaders and managers, you know.
Yeah, because like the first half was nip and tuck. The lead changed 6 times, but Tommy Dunn and Brian O'Mara and Liam Catton were causing havoc up in the forwards as well. Like, it's probably one of Liam Catton's best ever games for Tip.
Yeah, I think Liam, he scored 3 or 4 points that day. Liam was obviously, he was back then. He was a very dangerous forward. And you mentioned Brian O'Mara there. Brian would have been by far the fittest player we had on the panel. Back then, he was the one player you were trying to beat in deep tests, but you'd always struggle to beat. But he had a serious engine on him. Like Tommy, I don't remember Tommy going out playing too many bad games for Tipperary. Like Tommy had it all, you know. And you know, looking back at that day again, like there was years there. I think it could have been 99, 2000. Tommy would have been getting us over the line in most games. We saw obviously Owen Kelly took over when Tommy finished up, but Tommy back then was like he had it all. Like he was the leadership in the dressing room, the leadership out in the field, his touch, he's just. And when Tommy spoke, you listened. Like I often described Tommy Dunn at times, he was like the right key, and he growl at you, you know what I mean, but he give it to you straight. Like Tommy was the one fella when he spoke, you know, you listened, and he had serious respect in the dressing room board, and not just in Tipperary. He had respect if we went on Railway Cup trips or anywhere. Tommy Dunn was the main man. Yeah,
because like the second half, you got off to a great start. Brian O'Mara and Shelley got a point to put you 3 up, and Shelley was given the clenched fist to the Blackrock end, and like Brian O'Mara had a goal chance then not long after to put you 6 up, but he was blocked down, and so the ball comes down and James, he sticks it in the net.
Yeah, he'd never scored a championship goal before that, and one day I was marking me, he scored a championship goal. Actually, I remember, Jesus, I don't know who was going through, and I went, and it was thrown over my head, and he obviously buried in the back of the net, and I hear it a lot from the lads back in Templemore a good bit over. First time he scored a championship goal was marking you. But look, that's part of hurling, and look, Jamesy back then, he was like, whether on freeze or from play, he was a serious player. You just couldn't take your eye off him. And I remember I was probably the type of hurler that wanted to hit my own ball, and I didn't like doing the man marking job. But like when you were marking James O'Connor, you just had to, at times you had to forget the ball and try and keep him out of the game. But obviously for that moment I didn't, and he got his first championship goal.
Yeah, but like you recovered well, and you went 3 points up again. Like as we said, we talked about Liam Cahill already. David Kennedy had probably his best game ever for Tip that day. Eddie Tucker was a big influence when he came on as well.
Yeah, Eddie made a huge difference when he came on. I think he started actually in the replay and the back of his performance. But I actually remember, David Kennedy. That was, I wouldn't say, probably David Kennedy's best game. David Kennedy was very, very steady for Tipperary, but that was a day he really stood up but David loved them. He loved them battles, and the more dirtier it was, the more bitter it was, the more Kendi kind of enjoyed it. He was that type of hurler that you could throw anything at him. There was no reverse in him, and like that style and the way Clare were playing and the way you need to play against him really suited David, because the dirty ball, he'd put his head where no one else would. He was that type of player. He was a super player. When it came to the rough part of the game, he loved it. The real lot more came out of him.
Yeah, because we asked Nicky there a couple of weeks ago how underrated he was and how much Nicky actually rated him. But somebody that actually would have heard with him, obviously you would have seen how effective and how good David Kennedy actually was. Yeah,
and it says a lot about his character. He's still playing for Lockmore in the goal. I think David could play till he's 60, but I was talking about Brian Amari earlier about fitness. David Kennedy was another guy that I remember he was doing the bleep test and thinking nearly ran out of beeps by the time he finished. He was just, there was no end to the guy. He was, you know what, he's a fella I often said, if you're going to war in the morning, you looked over your shoulder, you want David Kennedy beside you. He gave his heart and soul to Tipperary. And I think at times people that talk about good centre-backs over the years, like he wasn't the most stylish player, and he'd never put his hand up and say he was, but he was a centre-back that, you know what, nothing went through the middle, and he gave his heart and his soul. But yeah, I couldn't speak highly enough of David Kennedy as a hurler or as a person.
Yeah, and just going into the last 5 minutes, like Paul Shelley had the chance to kill Clare off, and Davy pulls off that wonder save.
Yeah, geez, actually, I don't know what I was looking at there recently, and it came up. And actually, if that had to go in, we know it would definitely be one of my most favourite games of all times, because it would have been a super result. But like that save, it was huge, and what he did afterwards. But it was like how to get down that low, because in fairness to Paul, that day he caused huge problems for Brian Lohan. Like we all know how good a full back Brian Lohan was, but Paul going from the corner back up to the full forward line, he actually adapted very well to that. I often wonder, would he be able to? Like he was a serious cornerback, as we would have seen back in '97. But like when he went up into the forward line, he brought that physicality, and Nicky took a chance with him. And like that day, it showed that he was well capable of playing up in the full forward line. I think that had to go in. Obviously, I still believe if that had to go in and we won that game, I don't think anything would have stopped us that year. But it wasn't to be, obviously, with what happened after that.
Yeah, because like 2 minutes after that, we had the 19 steps from Connor Clancy that resulted in the penalty.
Yeah, it's Jesus. I don't know what the ref was looking at that day, but look, it was a decision that was made, and obviously Davy came up the field, and I think it was time up. There was only a few seconds he scored, and then did the whistle go after that. But look, to see Davy burying the ball, it was a sickener. But it's actually interesting over the years. Davy, for me back then, I think we all had our views of what we thought of Davy, and it's interesting in my job there. Obviously, I'm in Clare most of the time, and I've met up with Davy quite a bit, and everyone has their views on Davy, but he's actually one of the nicest fellas you'd meet. It's not a popular thing to say sometimes out there, but like any dealings I've had with Davy, he's a lovely fella. But back then, he was coming out after scoring the penalty, I was only thinking of one thing: you'd love to have stuck to Hurley. You know what I mean? But it was a great finish, and you know he sorted into us after the final whistle. All right, the smile was on his face. But yeah, look, it was a big moment in '99, and obviously it was a big moment in that game. And in fairness to him, he pulled off the big save with Paul before that, and then back up and scored the penalty. So it was a big 5 minutes for him.
Yeah, because even to this day now myself, I'd get a lot of abuse, because when Paul Shelley put you 3 points up, I climbed the fence in the Blackrock end, and it was actually beside the net when Davy made that save. So I had the perfect view. I was lying on the grass right behind the net, and I still sickened over. But sure, obviously we all know what happened in the replay, and obviously probably the inexperience was there. But looking at the draw, that probably laid the foundations for 2001.
Yeah, I definitely think going home the bus that day, it definitely felt like a defeat for us. We didn't handle it well, and I think there's a lot of inexperience for some of us. And I remember back then, we did train. We trained probably hard enough that week as well. I'd say if Nicky looked back at us, did we overdo it? I'd say there could be a bit of that in it back then for us all. I think from a management point of view and a player's point of view, we didn't prepare right for the replay, and we got found out. But from the word go that year, everything was geared towards, with no disrespect to Kerry, everything was geared towards beating Clare that day, and we firmly believed going into that match we were going to win. Mentally, we were in a great space. I think then, when obviously we drew, we weren't prepared for it. But you're right. I think that set the foundation for us as a group, both management and players, to really build from there. Like, we went away after that, and I think we all put the shoulder to the wheel to really get ourselves right for the year, because we knew we were building on something special. Like, we had a very, very special management team, we had special players. We'd experience with new blood coming in, because even the following year, then Owen was introduced. Was Larry introduced in 2001 or 2000? Could have been 2001. Larry was, but like each year there was more and more players coming through, and we were really buying into what the whole thing was about. But when Nicky came in as well, he really taught us all what it was about to be an intercounty player. As I said, I suppose we all, you mentioned earlier on about looking up to Nicky English, that we all looked up to Nicky English as young guys, and when he came in, Nicky, whatever he told you to do, you do it. And like, there was a very good blend with Ken Hogan, Jack Berrigan, a great backroom team. So I think we all learned a huge amount in '99, and definitely from there, we knew we could do something special. And I think that was definitely huge learning for us all. Like I look back, I made more mistakes than anyone in that game, but it was just to get that experience and to, you know what I mean, to get used to that atmosphere and what it meant to play for Tipperary. Because back then, and I know there was a back door there, but the atmosphere back in '99, 2000, when it was knockout, if you didn't get to much the final, the atmosphere and the nights, I think even for supporters' point of view, the night before matches down in Cork, like it was very, very special.
Yeah, because like we were talking to Tommy and Brendan there last week about 2001, and the fear that came in around the stadium from the supporters' point of view, and like they said, they never had a fear of losing, but from a supporter's point of view, it was probably the experience that we went through in '99 from a supporter. But obviously the players, that experience stood to them. But Nicky actually said to us a few weeks in the show that the mistakes he made in '99, and he pinpointed them to us, and some of them, like, I was actually surprised, but that's just a sign of the man that he'd hold his hands up even 20 years later, 22 years later, and say out the mistakes that he made and how he learned from them.
Yeah, and he'd be quick enough to tell us about our mistakes as well. That's the type Nick he is. But I think we all learned. You mentioned the point there about the supporters having that fear. I think when you're involved with a group and you buy into what the end goal is, you don't, that fear goes. And we actually didn't have that. And I look back at 2001. And I know there was tight games there, but whatever it was, I never believed we were going to get better in any game. I think from the Waterford Crystal right through, I don't think we lost a league game. We lost a championship game. I think the Waterford Crystal. It was something. Yeah, that belief was there, and it's easy to use the word belief, and it's going to have, but you have to do so much work to get that, and that's down. And I'm going back to Nicky again. Whatever he had, he was able to, from an individual player's point of view, he really got inside your head. Like, he really looked after you. And I look back, he not just molded you as a hurler, even as a person in your career and your life. Like, I learned so much from Nicky over the years that I even bring into my career. And I often think back, how would Nicky treated you in that situation? What would we have done different? And even the small things, I remember. And I think I could have said it in the book. I don't know. We were over in Sunderland, and I was a student at the time. And like, obviously, as a student, you had very little money. You were just about getting through college. But we went to Sunderland for a trip. And Nicky, just one night, he just walked past me and just could have put £100 in my back pocket there and said, go off now and make sure and mix with the lads, have a few drinks, and small things like that where it allowed me, not promoting drink, but I was able to sit down with the likes of Declan Ryan and a few of the lads and get to know them and getting to rounds them and having a bit of crack. And there were small things like that could be out in Nicky's back pocket. I don't know, but he was that type of fella. Then he, you know what I mean, even after any match, if you played well, you'd never hear from him. But if you played bad, he'd just be able to pick up the phone and just have a chat with you and be very honest with you. There's times he'd tell you stuff that obviously you didn't want to hear, but like you never minded that because he was always saying it for the right reasons. And you know what, he would, not just for me, and I always look back career wise, he played a huge part, but I would be surprised if that bunch of 35 lads around the panel wouldn't speak highly of Nicky, because if whether you're number 1 or number 35, he had your back.
Yeah,
I hope he never listens to this now, because I wouldn't be saying it to his face.
Yeah, because just the way you're talking, it's clear to see how much of an influence he was on your career, both your sporting career and your lifestyle in that as well. Like,
yeah, and I suppose it's like anything. I've been fortunate over the years, and I look back at managers, and people always say this manager did this or that manager. It always depends. You know what I mean? If some don't rate a manager if they're not don't make the 15. It's not who the manager was. I've always got something for the managers I've worked with over the years. Like I look back, like I would have learned from Len Gain or from huge amount from Nicky. Michael Dial when he came in. Ken Hogan managed. Obviously, he was a selector and manager. Ken was like, I would have learned a lot from Ken over the years, but when he trained the Brackens for a while as well. And then like, people have different views on Babs, and it might be the popular thing to say because I know some players mightn't have got out with Babs, but I would have got things from Babs that I wouldn't have got from other managers. He's his own unique way of doing things. Okay, you'd question some of his decisions that he made when you look back. But look, Babs was very fair to me, so I can't be critical of Babs, but I would have got quite a bit from Babs. And then obviously when Liam came in, I was fortunate to finish up and get 1 year with Liam Sheedy, and Liam I would very much put in the same mould as Nicky as management. I think when you hear the players talking about managers over the years, Liam was held in the same regard,
Yeah, and just before we finish up, I hope you're not going to let me down now, because I've had this dispute with a lot of people for a lot of years, and I'm saying it on the podcast nearly every week.
Jesus, where is this going now?
I had a my waddy or something with your name and Butlers in Templemore not long after you retired, and myself and Paddy Fennell in Templemore asked you the greatest hurler you ever hurled us. I hope you'll give us the same answer that I'm promoting on the podcast for the last 4 months.
That I ever heard of it. Jesus. I'm sure, am I talking about an Owen Kelly here, am I?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right, because if I had more drink, I could have said anything, but no. Yeah. Look, like I said, I've been fortunate. I've hurled with great hurlers over the years. But if you said to me, the one player that dragged us through so much in the tough years, like it's grand when you're winning. I look back in the team in 2001, and like we were blessed. Like we had, like you go down through the team, there were so many gifted players on that. I was very fortunate to be part of a team. But I look the years after that, and what Owen Kelly did for Tipperary hurling, it was at a different level. Like I often look back, even what he was doing in training. Like he just, the chap had it all. He was just absolutely gifted. I remember we played Limerick one year. Jesus, it was the Owen Kelly show. It was in Semper Stadium. We draw the game, we won by a few points. He gave a solid exhibition in the forward. Like it was about get the ball up to Owen. Like and he was winning games in his own. But yeah, for me, Owen Kelly would have been the most gifted hurler, and not just for Tipperary. I'd argue this with that. I just think the most gifted hurler, I think, in my generation there that I would have played with. And I know I'm friends with other hurlers out there, but definitely one for me was just a class apart,
Yeah, well, I suppose that kind of settles the dispute that I've had with people for the last 13 years, and it's on the record now, and anybody I know in Kilkenny can say that he did actually say it. So
yeah. No, as I said, like there's been super hurlers, but Owen, without a shadow of a doubt, and it's actually brilliant for Tipperary to have him back in there as a selector, because I know these young lads coming up now might know much about Owen Kelly, but I think I saw a clip there. I don't know who puts together these clips of players over the years, and there's the stuff on Owen Kelly, and geez, what he even did in Kieran's right through. He was just gifted. And come here, Paul Kelly wasn't too far off from either. Like Paul was a gifted hurler as well. But I think Owen was, like, without a shadow of a doubt for me. And anyone just needs to look back over the years. And that's where, and I did mention Babs, you know, I think it was unfortunate that in those years it just didn't work out what was going on with Babs, and I suppose it didn't happen there. But definitely Owen, like we saw when he came back in 2010 and stuff, like it was a great way for him to see it out, you know.
Yeah, like obviously he's highly rated in Tip and that, but if he'd half the medals that Henry had, he'd probably be up there with Henry.
Oh, he would be. Like, a lot of people would compare Henry and Owen, and like it's no secret I would have hurled with Henry in college, and I'm still very, very good friends with Henry. Henry's a fantastic hurler, but Henry had serious hurlers around him as well. Like, for years there when he was picking up the medals, like Henry, there's no doubt, Henry Shefflin, absolutely gifted, but Owen Kelly wouldn't have been blessed with the same level of hurlers around him. Like, if Owen Kelly was with any other county, like if it was with Kilkenny or being part of that Kilkenny setup, he would have been, like, everyone would be talking about in the same league as Henry, if not better. So look, as I said, sometimes it's hard to compare because Henry played there with fantastic forwards around for a number of years, and Owen had the same standard around for a number of years where he was winning games for Tipperary on his own up there. And I think we probably went through a stage in Tipperary where we were trying to turn backs into forwards, and it just didn't work out. Where in the last number of years we've been steeped that actually we're not trying to turn backs into forwards. We've just natural forwards. Like, you look at the natural forwards we've out there at the moment, what's come through, the likes of Bubbles, Shamey, then Larry. Like, we have been fortunate, but Owen was doing it year in, year out, when a number of years he had to do it on his own. That, for me, would put him ahead of any hurler out there.
Yeah, and sure, obviously we saw what he done with Munhon last year, dragging him through to the Seamus Arena. Listen, Eamon, thanks very much for coming on the show, and we wish you well for the year with the Brackens, and we hope to be talking to you again during the year.
No problem. Thanks, Thomas.
So that's the view from Eamon Cochran there. Very insighting into that, Sean.
Yeah, it was a great listen to now from him. It was he had some great stories himself, and yeah, it was just interesting to hear from a different, not to hear the same people the whole time. So yeah, he was a good listen to now.
Yeah, and he was just touching on 2001 there as well, and it seems that anybody who's spoken to around 2001, they all just had that self-belief in 2001 that they were going to win an All-Ireland.
And that's the main thing in winning All-Ireland, is having that self-belief. Like, they felt like they weren't going to be beaten the whole year, and it turned out that they weren't beaten for the whole year. So it is a great motivator, having that self-confidence. Like.
Yeah, and Stephen there, fair play to him. He's after giving us 2 books there, and a great competition there that he's after coming up with there for us. Yeah,
a great competition. It's going to be interesting to hear, see what we're going to get in now. And fairness to Stephen, he's been a great supporter of us, and we just tell our listeners, go out and support him now in his book. I know it's a great read now, so yeah, it's a great competition that he's running. Fair play to him. Yeah, and as Stephen said, you can send in what your favourite match from down through the years, or what your game of your life is, and one of them will be picked. Actually, 2 will be picked at random for a copy of the book, and also Stephen will look at using all these stories in his upcoming book that he'll be putting together in the near future. So you never know. Throw your name in there. You can email us at contactckstreaming@gmail.com, and we'll forward them all on to Stephen, and he'll be in touch with everybody that does get in contact with us, and to put you into the book coming forward. So that's it for another show.
Thanks very much to Lisa Gleeson for joining us, and I hope you all support the ladies footballers on Easter Sunday night in their fundraising venture. Thanks to Eamon Cochran for his memories on that Clare game in 1999, and to Stephen Gleeson as well. Don't forget to get in contact with us with your greatest Tipperary memories, and you never know, you might just end up in his new book. Email us with your memories at contactckstreaming@gmail.com, and you'll also go into a draw for his book, Game of My Life. Make sure to check us out on all our social media pages and to subscribe to our YouTube channel to keep up to date with all our latest episodes on the show. Good luck, and we'll talk to you all again very soon.